I was 26 and certain about almost nothing except two things. The smell of chalk dust from my first grade classroom made me inexplicably happy, and I loved Lucas Harrington enough to bet my one wild life on him. The rest, flowers and fonts, place cards and playlists, felt like somebody else's scavenger hunt. I kept telling myself that weddings weren't supposed to be competitions, no matter what Instagram and Aunt Nina's group chat implied. But that was before the dress. Before his sister. Before I walked out of a marble-floored salon with a garment bag heavier than my conscience. On the morning it happened, I put on lip balm and a brave face and rode downtown to Maison Stella, the kind of boutique where dresses hung far apart, each one with the alertness of a sleeping animal. The appointment was my first real fitting, a phrase everyone said with reverence. I'd brought my mom, who had once stitched magenta beads onto my 8th grade dance dress because we couldn't afford the new one I wanted, and I'd brought my future sister-in-law, Vivian, because she'd offered, and because Lucas had squeezed my hand and said, "She's excited to help?" May, it would mean a lot. If you don't know her, Vivian can look like excitement and feel like a weather warning. She's 33, unsettlingly breathtaking, and moves through the world as if she owns a trademark on taste. Her wrists are always stacked with bangles that whisper secrets when she gestures. She wasn't unkind. She was, in her own way, trying to be helpful. But the axis she spun on was different from mine. "Welcome, Maya," said Grace, the consultant with glossy bangs and comfortable eyes. "I pulled the Pauline for your silhouette. And the Sarah, and just in case you want to play, the Seraphine." She pronounced that last one like an invitation and a dare. Mom perched on the velvet love seat. "We're so excited," she said, stubbornly using we, as if the you I'd grown into was just her with better Wi-Fi. I had a budget. $2,000 felt both astronomical and conservative to me, more than I'd ever spent on a single thing that wasn't a security deposit, less than the Harringtons had paid for a weekend at a lake house. When I'd told Lucas, he'd blinked. "I can help," he said. "What if we chose something together?" I'd shaken my head. "I want to do this part. Please." What I didn't admit, I wanted to prove something to myself, and not even I knew exactly what. That love didn't require a certain thread count? That if I could plan a wedding without losing my center, I could get through anything? I was a scholarship kid who learned early that you could have a life built from coupons and still be warm and loved and free. I wasn't ashamed of money. I just didn't want it to be the language of our marriage. Grace zipped me into the Pauline first, a clean-lined satin sheath with a soft cowl and straps that curved like the idea of moonlight. I stepped onto the pedestal. "Oh," Mom breathed. Her voice was already full. "It's safe," Vivian said. "Very teaching degree." It was a compliment in her vocabulary, where safe meant tasteful and teaching degree meant professional and grounded. But what about the Sarah? Or, she glanced at Grace, the Seraphine? The Seraphine was legend. Hand-beaded tulle, a bodice that sculpted without shouting, sleeves that floated just off the shoulder. It cost $12,000. I knew because 2 nights earlier I had done the thing I'd promised myself not to do, and Googled it. The photos looked like snow captured mid-fall. Brides who wore it didn't take stairs. They descended. "That one's not in my range," I said lightly. Grace didn't flinch. "Totally okay. We're just here to play. Let me grab the Sarah." The Sarah was airy lace that looked like notebook doodles made by a romantic architect. It was sweet, and when I turned, the train unfurled like an apology. "It's lovely on you," Mom said, hand to heart. "Agree," said Vivian, which surprised me. "But do you feel transformed?" "Because," she leaned forward with the intimacy of a confession, "you get to be someone else in your wedding photos. Not someone else, exactly. The more you but sculpted. Like editing a book." I thought of my students, faces smudged with paint and snacks, turning their own stick figure families into galaxies. What if the most me was the me who didn't need a costume? But I didn't say that. I smiled and smoothed the skirt. When I stepped off the pedestal, I wandered, with Grace's permission, along the racks. My fingers found the Seraphine by accident or fate. Up close, the beading was like Braille for a prayer. It was heavy and holy and wrong for me. Behind me, I heard the clink of Vivian's bracelets, then her voice, not unkind, not loud, but not a whisper either. "She's sweet," she said. "But practical. The Pauline is fine. The Sarah is fine. She'll want to feel reasonable. Maya's not exactly a couture girl." I mean, she still uses coupons. A pause I could feel more than hear. She's a bit, cheap. The word slid into place like a needle, not a dagger. Needles do worse things, slowly. I pretended to study a hem as my ears burned. Grace made a soft noise of dismay. Mom didn't say anything, maybe because she hadn't heard, or because she was busy choosing the shade of lipstick that wouldn't smear on the veil. I thought of my mom's hands, nicked from her salon job, turning a thrift store dress into something I'd floated in. I thought of the way Dad used to pay bills at the kitchen table, smoothing them with his palms like maps. I thought of Lucas, shrugging off his suit jacket to carry a broken air conditioner up 4 flights. I wasn't cheap. I was careful. Sometimes careful looked like caution tape to people who were used to running full speed without ever hitting a wall. I shouldn't have cared. I did. Actually, I said to nobody and everybody, could I try the Seraphine? Just to play. Grace blinked once and recovered. Absolutely. Mom looked at me, startled, then watched my face, reading the pages as they turned. Are you sure, Carino? Just to play. The words rolled around in my mouth like marbles. Vivian sat back, the expression on her face briefly, beautifully naked. Surprise, yes, and something else. Hope? Ownership? I couldn't tell. The Seraphine took a small village. Grace and another stylist lifted it like a sleeping swan and lowered it onto me in increments, murmuring to each other about hooks and horsehair and a seam that needed respect. When the bodice settled, I felt taller. Not different. Amplified. The mirror made a slow, delighted sound I could almost hear. Mom's eyes flooded. The corners of her mouth trembled like she wanted to clap but knew better. Vivian stood. Oh, she said. Oh, that is transformative? I said, genuinely curious. She nodded. For once, she didn't have adjectives prepared. She didn't need them. The dress spoke fluent chandelier. Grace smiled a real smile. You're glowing, she said. I looked at myself, the girl woman in the mirror, the whisper of pearls across her shoulders, the way the light curled around the skirt like it had been waiting. I could feel where the bones of the bodice lifted my own spine. I had never felt more beautiful. I had never felt less like my daily life. And then a small, mean thing in me, the same thing that had stayed awake that night and Googled, sat up and looked at Vivian. I saw it clearly, the shape of a dream she had. Maybe she wanted the dress for herself once, before she'd opted for a courthouse ceremony with a hedge fund husband who bought her diamonds and never learned how to say, I'm sorry. Maybe she wanted the dress on me the way an art collector wants to see their favorites hung in houses they visit. Maybe she wanted to be the godmother of my taste. Do you want it? She asked softly, not quite able to hide the desire in the question. And I thought, do I want it? Or do I want to show you that I could? The needle shifted in my chest from hurt to challenge. By the time Grace mentioned the price, my heartbeat had already finished the math my brain refused to show me. 12,000, I could. I had 3 savings buckets, emergency fund, teacher's summer cushion, and the little stash for someday. The fixer-upper, the adoption we'd talked about, the tuition for a degree I hadn't decided to pursue. Taking the Seraphine would drain the 3rd and make a crack in the 2nd. It would mean choosing a dress over a dozen maybes. I'll take it, I heard myself say. Silence happened in waves. Mom's intake of breath. Grace's professional rearrangement of her features. Vivian's bracelets freezing mid-gesture. Are you sure? Mom said very carefully. Maya, I was already nodding. Yes, it came out too bright. It's my wedding. This is part of it. I looked at Vivian and smiled. I'll take it. Grace recovered smoothly, the way people in elegant places learn to roll with sudden extravagance. We can do a payment plan, she said, and a 10% courtesy reduction if you pay today, since we have that trunk show going. I handed over my card, which hummed with heat. Vivian looked moved, not with pity. With triumph. You won't regret it, she promised, with the authority of someone whose regrets wear couture. On the sidewalk, garment bag over my arm like a new limb. The city looked extra sharp, the edges of buildings honed. Mom looped her fingers through mine. It's beautiful, she said. You're beautiful. But are you? She didn't finish the sentence. It was the mother's version of a safety check. Are you okay? Are you doing this for you? Are you slipping into a current you don't know how to swim in? It felt good, I said. To not be... I tried to say cheap and couldn't. The word stuck, small and jagged. It felt good, she squeezed. Feeling good and being good for you are cousins, she said. Friends, not twins. We walked to the subway like two people carrying a secret and a dress. That night, Lucas came over with takeout and a bouquet that smelled like green apples. He kissed my forehead, eyes scanning for news. How'd it go? He asked. Should I brace for squealing? When I showed him, the garment bag taking up the entire couch like an invited guest, his eyebrows did a little dance. He slipped the zipper down to peek. Whoa, he said reverently. It's like if Moonlight had a budget line. More like Moonlight filed an IPO, I said, trying to make it a joke. He looked at me, then the bag, then me. Maya, he said carefully. Sweetheart, it's stunning, but is this expensive? I supplied. Yes. How expensive? 12. He breathed slow like a runner at the end of a race. Okay. Can we afford this? I bristled at we, sudden as a spark. I used my money. He flinched, then softened. I know. Not a ledger. I'm not scolding. I'm worried? I'm not reckless, I said. I did the math. He sat on the rug, legs long, hands linked. I know you're not reckless. You're the opposite, which is why I'm asking. Did something happen? I told him. Not the exact word. I wasn't ready to give it airtime. The tone, the glance, the way I suddenly wanted to slide my tree roots into polished marble and hold. He closed his eyes and nodded. Viv, he said like a sigh. I'll talk to her. No, I said too quickly. Don't. I don't want you to mediate us like you're a tennis net. He smiled, rueful. Bad metaphor, but noted. After he left, after dishes and grading worksheets about shapes and colors, I unzipped the bag and touched the dress. My palm came away glittering like I'd clapped in a snowfall. I tried to imagine myself walking down an aisle in it, the room holding its breath. My stomach tightened. The next week, other small costs rose up like mushrooms after rain. Shoes that didn't cheapen the dress, a veil that didn't insult it, underthings that made the magic smooth. By the time I added tax, the total was a number that lived at the top of a roller coaster. I called my bank twice. I didn't sleep well. In the odd minutes before sleep, I saw not the dress, but the line where my savings had been, crossing into what if my students helped. First graders are the antidote to couture. They don't care what you're wearing as long as it's soft enough to hug and sturdy enough to kneel in. They made me paper veils and insisted I wear them to math. They made me crowns. They told me the whiteboard was my aisle. I walked, and they threw eraser shavings like confetti. At the second fitting, Grace pinned the bodice with the skill of a cartographer. Vivian couldn't make it. She had a meeting about a gala that promised not to change the world, but to make it feel more charming for an evening. Mom came, as always. We kept our voices low, the way you speak in a museum. You're quiet, Grace observed. It's heavy, I said. She smiled sympathetically. The Seraphine has a presence. We can take out some layers. Not too many. You'd lose the integrity. But some. It's not just fabric, I confessed. Grace tilted her head. You don't have to keep it, she said matter-of-factly. I say that with zero pressure. I love selling art. I also love making sense. Brides change their minds. Human beings change their minds. Is that allowed? I asked, a little laugh escaping. I thought the dress was an oath. The dress is a tool, Grace said. You could wear a sundress and a paper ring and be a bride. I looked at my reflection and, for a beat, saw my little self wearing a pillowcase like a cape. I saw Mom sewing beads. I saw Lucas rinsing plates in my sink, sleeves rolled. I saw a life, not a picture of a life. Do you ever have brides who buy the dress for the wrong reason? I asked. All the time, she said softly, as if telling me where she hid her favorite cookies. And then they figure it out. We figure it out together. When I stepped off the pedestal, carrying my questions like folded napkins, a woman in a simple blue dress with cotton tote bags on her shoulder held the door for me. She had hair like mine when I wake up, unscripted, and the kind of hands that looked busy even at rest. She sat with a younger woman who had brought her own bouquet of worries. I caught a snatch of conversation. "We can't afford anything here, Mom." The older woman squeezed her and said, "Let's just look. Looking's free." I went home and took the Seraphine out and laid it across my bed like a map of foreign places. I tried then to name what had been tugging at me. It wasn't regret exactly. It was misalignment. The dress fit me. The reason didn't. At dinner with the Harringtons, a week later, the kitchen in their brownstone smelled like expensive butter. Vivian poured wine and kissed my cheek and asked about fittings, and my voice did the thing where it pretended to be fine. Lucas's mother, Monique, wore the kind of sweater that should be called a cashmere discipline. She politely asked about my kids' reading levels. Mr. Harrington told an anecdote about a politician who owed him a favor. When dessert came, berry. Tart that could have made me confess anything. Vivian said, "Maya, I've been thinking. We need to schedule your hair trial. I have a friend at—" I set my fork down. "Viv," she blinked, unused to my interruptions. "You hurt me," I said, my voice gentle and firmer than I felt. "At the fitting, you called me cheap." Silence fell, not hostile, just awake. Vivian's face rearranged itself, a slow apology now, a fast defense at the ready and backing away quickly like it had overstepped. "Maya," she said, if I said anything like that, it wasn't—" "You did," I said, steady. "And it's not the word that's the problem. It's the assumption. I'm careful with money because I want to be. Because it's part of who I am, and I like her. The dress, I bought it. And I realized I bought it because I wanted to prove something to you, not to me." Lucas's hand found my knee under the table. Vivian's mouth parted. Her bracelets finally moved again, softly. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not a hedge fund apology, a human one." That was cruel. It's a word I grew up hearing in the reverse. My mom used to call my dad cheap as a weapon, and then she used my spending as a virtue. It messed me up. The pendulum swung. I am drawn to extravagance like it will save me. Her eyes shone in a way that didn't threaten to spill. "When you tried on the Seraphine, I saw a story I loved and I wanted to be its author. That isn't fair. To you." I exhaled something I'd been holding since the marble pedestal. "Thank you," I said. "I believe you." Mr. Harrington cleared his throat, unsteady, as if remembering he was in the room. Monique passed the tart and let it sit, a peace offering in the shape of berries. "What do you want to do?" Lucas asked me later, in the quiet of my kitchen, the kind without chandeliers, the kind where light bulbs existed to be replaced, not admired. "I want to wear the dress I love," I said. "Not the dress that makes a point." "Which is?" he asked cautiously. "The Pauline," I confessed, and then tried not to cry in a way that would make my nose red. When I put it on, I felt like me. The Seraphine is magnificent, but it's not my life. It's something to carry, not something to live in. I whispered the next part as if admitting a crime. "I want to return it." "Then let's return it," he said simply, except it wasn't simple. Maison Stella had a return policy as gentle as satin and as firm as boning. Custom fittings begun, non-refundable. Grace was kind on the phone. "We can consign," she said. "We can try to sell it for you. You might not get all of it back." I did the math again, this time not as a dare but as a rescue mission. If I could sell it for 8, we could patch. The cushion I'd cracked, maybe even buy an oyster mushroom kit for my classroom, which I'd promised the kids as part of our fungi unit. I thought of the woman with the cotton tote bags. I listed the dress on a secondhand bridal site, my pictures careful, my notes painfully honest, worn twice in fittings, no alterations yet, veil included if you want it. I priced it at 9, haggled in my head. Messages arrived like birds. Some were bots, some were dreamers, some were people with the exact same measurement as me, which somehow felt intimate. Her name was Aisha. She was 28, a nurse who'd been working nights since the pandemic, began and was marrying a drummer with a broken car and a good heart. She lived 2 boroughs away and asked if she could see it. When she arrived, she took off her shoes at my door without being asked and said, "May I pet your plant?" Like it was a cat. She had those busy resting hands and a laugh that turned the room inside out. When she put on the seraphine, the whole apartment smiled. I don't know how else to describe it. The dress lifted off me and landed onto someone who glowed not despite it, but within it. The world made a noise of approval. Aisha turned, beaming, then startled. God, I shouldn't, she said practically, the way I heard my mom sometimes when faced with a good lemon tart. I have constraints. How much? I asked quietly. She chewed her lip. I can do 7, she said. 7.5 if I sell my trumpet. She grinned at my face. Yes, I'm a nurse who plays trumpet. Dad made us all pick an instrument like it was a spare language. I thought of my savings and my student's mushroom kit, of our wedding budget, of the Pauline hanging at Maison Stella, quiet and patient. I thought of what the dress had already given me, clarity and a conversation and an apology I didn't know I needed. I shook my head. 6, I said. Take it for 6. She blinked as if I'd suggested swapping it for a sweet potato. Maya, it's right, I said. Come on, let me zip you again. I'll pack the veil. When she left, hugging the garment bag like a cousin she'd found late, the apartment was too quiet and exactly right. I pressed my palm to my chest, felt the little thread that looped from me to my younger self tug twice. Who's the bride? She asked. I am, I answered. At my next appointment, Grace smiled when I told her. I'll check on the Pauline, she said. I knew. You did not, I teased, and she winked. Okay, I did not. But I suspected. The thing about that dress is that it doesn't try to be your life. It lets you be the life. We ordered the Pauline. It felt like a deep inhale. We tailored it with precision, but not anxiety. I wore shoes I could run in because I planned to. The veil was something Mom and I made from a rolled hem and 3 evenings of kisses on the cheek. The night before the wedding, Vivian came by with a cake box and a stiff bouquet. She looked different, not in makeup or clothes, but in the way she stepped into the room like she was visiting a friend, not inspecting a set. She handed me the cake. I owe you, she said, and then before I could deflect, no, truly. Not just an apology. I owe you for making me look at a habit I like too much to question. You don't, I said, because I'm not very good at letting debts land. Then I tried the right sentence. Thank you. She rolled her lips between her teeth and laughed. I still adore the Seraphine. I always will. But the documentary of your life? She gestured at my living room, the plant she'd asked to pet once, the stack of children's books, the mug collection of a donor-funded teacher. This is better. Do you know what I did with it? I asked. She smiled. Lucas told me. He was proud. He said he learned something. Not about money. About you. Stay for tea? I asked. I have chamomile that tastes like an apology. She did. We drank and told each other small truths. She told me about the courthouse and the dress she'd never let herself want, and how she was considering, for the first time, the possibility of a vow renewal that didn't involve the words sponsors or donors. I told her about the mushroom kit, and she laughed until she cried, and then actually cried. On my wedding day, the sunlight behaved itself. It filtered and landed and didn't insist on being the story. The Pauline slid over my shoulders like an idea I'd already had. When I looked in the mirror, I recognized my face. I recognized my life. Mom zipped me, fingers capable and shaking. Ready? She asked. No, I said. But yes. At the venue, a converted library with windows taller than the panic that had lived in my stomach all year, the aisle looked like mine. The harpist, Lucas's choice, played music that sounded like rain tapping on windows. Lucas waited. He didn't look at my dress first. He looked at my eyes like he'd been practicing. Vivian stood near the front, silver dress behaving like water. She pressed her hands together when she saw me, a gesture I recognized from church and classrooms and rehab stories. Reverence. I lifted my chin at her as I passed. We married. We said words that felt less like scripts and more like hammer blows to a forge. Our friends cheered. Monique hugged me with a softness I hadn't expected and said my name like a plea to be good to her son. Mr. Harrington shook my hand too hard and slipped a check into my palm and then, when he saw my face, took it back, laughed, and put it in the card where checks belong. Mom danced with my cousin to Selena and schooled her, then sat, breathless, and cried happy tears that didn't mess up her makeup because she'd learned the trick with the powder from YouTube. During dessert, Lemon cake with a surprise layer of blackberry. Because life is like that, Vivian tapped a glass. A toast, she said. The room briefly braced. She smiled and let us unclench. To Maya, she said, who taught me that wealth isn't a dress you put on. It's a choice you make about where to put your love. And to Lucas, who knows good love when he sees it. She held up her glass. To the most beautiful Pauline I've ever seen. People laughed and clinked and sipped. I lifted my glass, my hands not shaking at all. After midnight, when the DJ had pivoted to songs that only came on at weddings and dental conferences, I slipped out with Lucas to the courtyard where fairy lights pretended to be stars and succeeded. He tugged me toward the shadow of the fig tree. Wife, he said with awe, like he'd sighted a rare bird and married it. How's it feel? Like good shoes, I said. Like a dress that lets you eat cake. Like my name. He kissed me, and we leaned against brick and listened to our friends sing badly and expertly at the same time. The fig tree rustled in solidarity. The horizon thought about tomorrow. A month later, new routines grew over and around our old ones. I hung the Pauline garment bag in our closet like a secret. The mushroom kit sprouted in the classroom, a forest on a log, my students solemn with gratitude and curiosity, their palms flat on the table as if to hold the whole moment steady. We made soup from the mushrooms and wrote thank you notes to the fungi like they'd been guests. I got a message from Aisha with a photo of her in the Seraphine on a stoop. The caption read, "We eloped in the park. Trumpet at sunset. I thought of you." I thought of me too, the version who had pressed a credit card into Grace's hand with a little fire in her chest, the version who'd learned to name the flame. I wrote back, "You look like a song." "Send video," she did. It sounded not like rain on windows, but like laughter on a block where kids chalk hearts on the sidewalk. In late autumn, Vivian and I met for coffee. She'd brought a notebook with a gold V on the cover, and inside, the messiest list of ideas I'd ever seen. For the gala, she said, rolling her eyes at herself. Different vendors. Simple menu. Actual community involvement. It may tank. Or it may be the first gala anyone leaves less hungry from. I like this you, I said, and meant it. She sipped. Me too, she admitted, almost shy. When holidays arrived, I brought the Pauline out just long enough to air it and then tucked it back, a relic I didn't need either to worship or to wear again. Lucas and I ate too many cookies and learned that our neighbor's cat, Butter, had an alarming fondness for tinsel. In January, we filed taxes as married people and laughed like we'd hacked the government. In February, I told my class the story of how sometimes the right thing looks less shiny on the hanger, and we practiced making choices between two good markers. And when the world presented me with other needles, small words from big mouths, phrased kindnesses with sharp edges, I felt around my ribs and found a new quiet shield. It wasn't made of tulle or pearls. It wasn't made of anything you could buy or return. It was made of the day I learned that a dress doesn't make a marriage, and spending doesn't make a self. And proving myself to someone else is the most expensive thing I'll never do again. On our first anniversary, Lucas and I went back to the library-turned venue, which now hosted craft fairs on Sundays. We bought soap that smelled like basil and pears. We ate empanadas that dripped joy. We looked at each other among strangers and felt the way you feel when you recognize home in a face. "Remind me," he said almost casually, an echo of a question he'd asked the night before our wedding. "Why did we choose this place?" "Because the ceiling is high," I said. "Because it lets the sound of everybody we love get big without losing any details. Because it was a place made for stories," he kissed my knuckles. "Because it was us," he said. "Because it was us," I agreed, and reached into my tote where I'd brought a small, folded piece of tulle, a square from the edge of the veil Mom and I made. I pressed it into his palm. He lifted his eyebrows. "A relic," I said, smiling. "To remind us." "We don't need reminders," he said, shy and sure. "No," I said. "But sometimes they make the remembering sweet." We sat on the steps like teenagers with less time and more gratitude. And I thought of the dress I didn't keep and the one I did. The sister-in-law I didn't ask for, and the friend I'd grown. The life that tilted toward enough again and again like a plant toward light. Later, when we walked past Maison Stella, I saw a new window display. The Seraphine spun on a faceless mannequin, wearing the kind of light that doesn't belong to rooms. I pressed my fingers to the glass and felt nothing tug. I admired. I moved on. "Tea?" Lucas asked. always offering the kind of extravagance I never had to pay back. Always, I said. We crossed the street at the light, casually regal in our coats, and when the wind caught the hem of my dress, nothing fancy, just a good skirt with a hopeful swing, I let it lift, then fall. I looked at my reflection in the dark window of a closed bakery, the person who walked me back. "Hello," I said inside. "Hello back," she said, grinning. Then we went home. The end.